Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Phuphanich, a principal technologist at AWS. Sean, good to have you back as always.
Great to see you.
And this whole idea of cybersecurity being revved up by artificial intelligence, we'll get to that. But in the cloud era, in the cloud computing era, where we have lots of small federal agencies that are 100% in the cloud, they don't have data centers anymore. And even the big agencies, are hybrid, at least partially in the cloud. And that raises the question, again, especially in the supercharged cyber threat era that we're in, is the balance of responsibility for cybersecurity, of the workloads, of the data, and so forth, between the agency customer and the cloud services provider. And it really is a shared model, isn't it?
Yeah, so we call that the customer responsibility model. And so this is important because sometimes there's a misconception that customers think that simply operating in the cloud completes all your security needs. And really what it is, it's divided into two parts. So you have the responsibility of service providers or security of the cloud. And we're protecting all of the underlying infrastructure, service endpoints, any of our serverless services. We're patching and maintaining vulnerability management around that. And then security in the cloud, or what a customer will deploy into the cloud environment, becomes their responsibility. So if I take files or documents, or I take a WordPress site and I don't update it and I make it open to the entire internet, then that is a risk I'm taking as a customer, as opposed to following best practices, keeping things up to date, putting them behind a web application firewall, encrypting my data, etc. So as a cloud provider, we provide you all the tools to do that very easily. We provide the prescriptive guidance of what you should do, but ultimately you as an implementer or deployer will need to make those decisions on how secure or how open you want your environment and data to be.
In other words, it's almost analogous to having a fire and an intrusion alarm set up in your house. You still have to close your doors and lock the windows.
Yeah, you still have to turn the alarm on.
I still have to turn it on.
Work, yes. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, let's get to that idea of artificial intelligence supercharging, I think is your word, the AI, the cybersecurity threat. And give us some more specifics on how that's happening.
So a big question I get a lot is, what is the change of the threat with AI and cybersecurity? And today it's more like, what are the existing cybersecurity threats? And then how does AI enhance that through reducing the skill set required to achieve it, or automate it, or make it more sophisticated in a way that was difficult in terms of resources to do before? So I'll give you some examples. You probably constantly get emails or texts or some kind of spam. Sometimes it's in broken English, attempting to get you to engage, attempting to think you had a toll that a violation that you owe, or you have a package that is not going to get delivered if you don't answer. And so AI will allow a wider range of people to be able to do those types of tasks more effectively and at scale. Their proficiency in English or technical skills can be lower in order to do that. So the volume of those goes up. And we've already seen that today. I believe there was a New York Times article that said within the past year, phishing attacks have essentially gone up by 40x, which is a massive amount. It also increases the risk of almost like state-level threat actors. So if you have, let's say, a level 10 hacker that works for a state sponsor, they are now more productive in the work they are doing. They now have junior hackers that they can potentially up-level to a certain degree and be more productive in their hacking. So you're increasing the volume across the board, but also the volume of that high-skill, high-complexity hacks. And so if you look at it from that perspective, everything you look at from cybersecurity today, phishing, social engineering, exploits, etc., it's all the same kinds of attacks for the most part, but they've now just been supercharged or uplifted to a higher degree of sophistication and complexity. And particularly on the social engineering side, I think that's where you see such a huge leap because now it's not just a simple text. It could be an image, it could be a voice, it could be video that is now trying to deceive you into giving up your password or sending money to a bank account or whatever the case may be in terms of trying to trick you.
But also fair to say that AI is accelerating the traditional hacking methodologies that kind of came before social engineering, where people would just find network vulnerabilities or application programming vulnerabilities.
So if you look where AI has been really great is in the coding world, right? Where reinforcement learning can really improve the capabilities quickly over time. And that ability also works not just for productivity of coding, but also productivity of finding exploits and vulnerabilities and finding variations of things that get patched. So it could even be that you didn't even know about a vulnerability a piece of software had. Patch Tuesday comes out and you see, oh, they patched this particular thing. You could then use AI to basically find some variant of that and then have a zero-day exploit that's based on something that was actually fixed. And so this is a paradigm that's very different than what we've seen in the past. Is just the ability to produce these exploits is increasing at such a fast rate. So having some other means of protection besides just the patching is really critical.
All right, and what are some of the specific challenges that government agencies are facing here, and what should their defensive strategies now look like, given what you've said?
So government in particular, the biggest challenge is the size of government, the diversity of workloads and teams that they have, and just the general pace of change. So AI as a whole is running at a very rapid rate. Even for the commercial sector, it's running at a rapid rate. And so in the public sector, this is a massive change. And so there are strategies that the government has defined and implemented to a degree today that could be effective. The NIST cybersecurity framework is a great foundation. Zero trust is something that both the OMB and DoD are pushing for adoption now that could be more effective against these attacks because it presumes breach. So a lot of these types of insider threats that you're seeing, the increase in those can be mitigated with this presumed breach model where not only are you trying to keep people out, once they get in, you're trying to reduce that blast radius and damage that they can do. And you're also saying that I presume that some of my people that are authorized and authenticated, people either that work for me or have tricked us into thinking they work for us, we're looking at them as a potential threat as well. And so we're using observability and analytics to see that change in behavior of someone that's doing their job versus someone that's now doing reconnaissance on a network, attempting to exploit permissions, attempting to exploit vulnerabilities within the network.
Yeah, so it sounds like the idea of what they were calling moving your awareness to the left, that is sooner and sooner in the cycle of software deployment and attack vectors, that is really crucial now, rather than the reactionary mode, because you're never going to keep up.
Yes, the rapid discovery of vulnerability exploits, one of the ways to mitigate that is by improving the software development cycle. So if you look at like DevSecOps as a principle and your software supply chain, if the coding of these products is including AI code reviews and AI assessments of the vulnerabilities in advance of them going public and going into the wild, then you are mitigating a lot of the potential attacks that a hacker would then use once it's public. So getting those practices and using the tools that are available today to improve that and reduce your risk is a huge first step and probably the earliest step you can take in the cycle to make sure that you're not exposing yourself to more risk.
Right, so even if agencies have a DevSecOps type of pipeline going, that needs to be reviewed as well in the AI context.
Yeah, so AI supercharges your existing processes. So for example, when I was talking about code review, a lot of teams already have code review in place, but the effectiveness of a human, even a good one, to do code reviews and discover, many ranges of vulnerabilities or possibilities is difficult. So if you have both human review and you have AI review, you're expanding the scope and use cases and ability to detect those potential risks early in the cycle. If you catch it at check-in, then you're not affecting your employees or your customers, you're not affecting citizens, and then you don't have all the extra plumbing that's required to manage those vulnerabilities as it comes back to the dev team to get fixed.
So if you had a pipeline in DevSecOps, and here we are, we're great, we're developing new capabilities, deploying it rapidly, that would halt if you don't take into account the AI and add that kind of sensitivity into the checking in your pipeline because of AI.
So it's more that the AI will basically be an enhancement to your team's capabilities to check if there are risks in your code. So you're reducing your risks. You're not necessarily reducing AI-specific risks, but just risks overall that could later be exploited by AI.
Right, so either way, you're keeping a step ahead of what could be out there that is AI-enabled. All right. Well, what do agencies need to do to prepare this? Because we've talked about the software development cycle, but really throughout the life cycle of software, I would think would have to be changed.
So the software segment is one part of it. If you look at it in terms of overall agency protection, I think an important part is having security culture extend past the security and engineering teams. If you look at what I was talking about earlier with the social engineering, is also one of those vectors that everyone needs to be aware of the types of attacks and attempts that can be made. One of the reasons you're able to easily detect these texts and emails that you get is because you keep getting the same kind of stuff over and over again. It's clearly a scam at that point, and you've now educated yourself. Well, as new things come out, how do agency employees learn about this? Or is there security procedures in place that help educate them on the latest kind of threat intelligence or way they're being attacked? Or what they should do even if they think it's real. So if their boss comes and tells them to do something unusual, is there a procedure they should do to check to make sure that's real before it actually happens? Going back to the engineering side, it really has to do with implementing a lot of those core security frameworks and strategies that exist today, and then enhancing them with AI capabilities as they become available. And so one of the big ones I'm seeing right now is at the observability layer. So if you don't have the foundation of observability, stuff you can't see, then AI is not going to help. But if you have an environment that has a lot of different security components, it's all generating the telemetry, you then need something that can digest and understand and correlate that information. Mm-hmm. And so that's where AI becomes really powerful, because it can look at a lot of stuff that is in all these different logs that in some cases can look like gibberish, but it will correlate how that turns into an attack under the MITRE framework or something like that.
Sure, and as a comprehensive cloud provider, and I mean comprehensive not just in the level of services, but in the range of industries, which is pretty much all of them that AWS is serving, I imagine you can help a given sector type of client with that observability and with those tools they need to stay ahead of the threat.
Yes, so we produce telemetry all across our cloud infrastructure, so network authentication, resource deployment, and we provide logging tools. We also have the foundational AI that's used by a lot of our partners to do exactly what you're talking about, where they assimilate all of that data into something like a SIM. And then they're using AI to assess that information, where it's now been aggregated across every point, whether it's endpoints, whether it's services, whether it's client interactions, to now determine, okay, is this behavior that I would identify as a threat and I need someone to look at it? Is this something I need to shut down immediately through automated action? Or is this benign and I'm going to pass it through?
So then, in general, it sounds like you would advise agencies not to treat the cloud service provider as just a vendor at arm's length, but really get together, because you've got all of this data and tool sets that they can use to their own advantage.
Yeah, partnership's been a big part of our focus, especially in zero trust initiatives. So AWS works with a number of industry partners to not just provide small pieces of a solution, but to help align something more complete, and particularly to advance the capabilities of AI within that zero trust framework.
All right, some great information. Sean Phuphanich, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
And again, Sean Phuphanich is the principal technologist at AWS. I'm Tom Temin, and you've been watching the series Accelerate Together, Secure by AI. For more on this discussion, please visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Accelerate Together.